Welcome to Tech Topics brought to you by CyberVenger. We help keep small businesses stay protected and compliant with cutting-edge cybersecurity and IT solutions.
Hello everyone and Happy New Year! My name is Andy, I'm the Managing Consultant for CyberVenger. Today we're going to go over that list of chores that we all got to do at least yearly. The following list is not things that you only have to do yearly, it's things that you should be doing at least yearly. A lot of these are arguably more quarterly tasks, or in some cases even monthly. Just depends on your organization. But a lot of them are stuff that I've seen people fail to do ever in their environment when I'm working with them and advising them as a security consultant. So we're going to talk about this kind of stuff. Some of those are basic and simple. I bet you got a couple on here that may not have thought of. So without further ado, let's get into our list. The first one on our list is an easy one. Passwords. You want to change all your passwords in your environment, all the critical stuff that you haven't touched in a year. Change it. Now, when I say a year, it doesn't have to be January. I'm making the video because it's Happy New Year, right? This is the kind of thing that's everyone's mind. Maybe you sync it to your financial year. Maybe your company closes out in, June or something. Whatever works for you. If you're a school, perhaps July, before the start of the new school year is your new year from this perspective. Doesn't matter. The point is that the frequency is at least yearly. So you want to change your passwords. You want to change them on things like the things you forget about, like your APC devices, maybe UPSs, PDUs, battery backups, temperature monitor systems, all those IoT kind of things that we tend to forget about. Even other things like if you have a tape drive on your environment, a lot of times they're connected to the network and they have a password that lets you manage the tape drive itself. Change that too. Any device like that. This is obviously not an exhaustive list, but you should get in your mind thinking about that. Certainly your main Active Directory administrator account should all be changed. Now, I've heard some pushback on this piece of advice. In fact, the NIST body, the Government Standards Institute, they actually, in some of their standards, say, yeah, you don't really need to change your passwords because everybody should be using two-factor. Now that you have two-factor, you don't need to change your password. I completely disagree. It's called two-factor for a reason, right? If your passwords are essentially compromised, if you're abandoned maintaining the good password maintenance, right? You're not changing them, they're not good length, then it's not really a factor anymore, is it? And you just have your code or your token or whatever that second factor is. And then it's really back down to one factor, and that's just something easy for the bad guy to figure out. So you don't want to have passwords that are old. Furthermore, you don't want to reuse passwords in other places. I've seen a number of compromises this year, previous year, I should say 2023, where that's exactly what happened is someone would break into one password on 365, is a nice cloud exposed thing, and they just kept banging away at it. They eventually figured out what the password was, and they used that on the internal environment because the internal environment was synced via Active Directory replication. It's the same password ever. Single sign-on does have a dark side. Single sign-on is great for management because you only have one thing to protect and one thing to change. It's bad because you only have one thing to broken into, right? It's like you get a castle, you got one gate. You only have to worry about one place, but gosh, if they break it, you're done. So I like to segregate things. And anything that's out in the cloud, I never want to use that password internally in my environment. I could do a whole video on good passwords, so I'm going to skip on that. You get the idea. The next thing we want to talk about is your backups. This is a very heavily neglected thing. And it's kind of a direct cause of a lot of massive, serious failures I've seen in organizations, included real permanent data loss, things I couldn't even help them with. By the time I arrived, it was just too late. If you don't do your backups well, if you don't protect your backups, if they're not working, and you need to restore data, it's too late. You can never recover that data. Now, maybe if the hard drive failed, sometimes you can hire somebody to, there are data recovery places that will take the splatter out of the drive and try and access data that way. That's very expensive and very iffy. So I shouldn't say that you can never recover, but if the data itself is truly lost on the primary device and you don't have a backup, how could you possibly recover it? You won't. So you should review your selection lists. You have your backup software, maybe it's Veeam, maybe it's Backup Exec, maybe it's something in the cloud, maybe it's something else, and then you have a list of things you're backing up. You want to make sure that that list is in fact comprehensive. I cannot tell you the number of times I have seen customers do some kind of project, produce brand new servers, new service, and then forget to add them to their backups. The backup person is over here and the project person over here, and they're not talking. Who's there to remind them? Well, you should be. And this is a quality control check. You should go back and see if that got done. People make mistakes all the time. That's totally understandable. What's not understandable is that we forget we make mistakes and we don't put controls in place to catch them. This is such a control. Check your selection list. Next one, you want to talk to your management and say, hey, this is what our recovery time objective is. This is what our recovery point objective is. Let's say it's a day, right? Right now, you're talking to the management team. Right now, if we got completely destroyed, I could bring us back in 1 day with data that's no more than 1 day old. Pretty reasonable, but maybe not. It depends on the business. Perhaps the business has changed, and now management expects to be able to recover within 4 hours with data that's no more than 8 hours old, or whatever. You want to have that line of communication over the business, because if you're not meeting that objective, you could be in real trouble and something bad happens. And then, of course, finally, restore tests. I hesitated to put this one in here because, in my opinion, you should be doing this quarterly or even more often. A lot of our clients, as a part of our policy for our managed service clients, we'll do a restore test every time right before we patch the servers. So we know for sure the backups are good right then and there, right before we might force ourselves to require them. So we do it monthly for most of our customers. But we advise at least quarterly. But certainly, if you haven't done it yearly, you want to start doing it then. And a lot of organizations I know, too many, never restore their backups. They see the job says success, and they go, okay, well, we're successful, and they just assume it's good, and they don't test it. So you want to retest your backups, and this is aside from disaster recovery. Moving on to disaster recovery, you want to do a restore test in your disaster recovery. You want to do a full scale. Can you recover from a building fire? Major disaster scenario. Another thing to look at is, are your backups secure from ransomware? Would your DR environment be protected? We'll talk a little bit about how to audit for security in a minute. We'll get to that point. So DR tests should be yearly. Expiration lists. Everything that you have expires, right? Your software needs to be renewed. Support needs to be renewed. Hardware support needs to be renewed. SSL certificates, domain names, all kinds of things, right? And to kind of dovetail on it, there's end of life, right? Did you pay for support for your VMware environment? And is your environment even supportable? Every vendor will publish an end of life for when they no longer support the products. And little spoiler alert, Microsoft just did that with Windows 2012. So even 2012 or 2012 R2 even, it's no longer supported by Microsoft. This means they're not releasing security patches. So if there's a big security vulnerability out there, you've got it and you can't fix it. The only way to fix it is go to 2016 at an absolute minimum. Which of course, that's going to expire in a couple of years. And speaking of a couple of years, Windows 10 is going to expire in less than 2 years. Can you believe it? And 2 years goes by fast when you have to replace all those workstations throughout your environment. It's almost easier sometimes to replace a server than it is with the workstations. It can be very tedious. You can have a lot of users you have to deal with. There's a lot of hemming and hawing about what applications on there, all that kind of things. Maybe your favorite application doesn't work on Windows 11. You got to debug that. So you want to get ahead of that puppy. But every year you should go through your expiration list, your documents of things, your end of life things for all your products, all your software in your environment, and make sure that you're ahead of that curve. You don't want that to sneak up on you. You do not want to have to drop everything you're doing and chase that, because boy, can that screw up your logistics. Find your vulnerabilities. We touched on this earlier. Vulnerability scans and security reviews. You should do a vulnerability scan every year, maybe more often if you're in a situation that your compliance calls for that. Just look for vulnerabilities that you're missing. Not every vulnerability is solved by a Windows patch. There are things that you could do, like TLS, for example. You need to make sure that you tell your Windows servers, do not accept TLS 1.0 or 1.1. You got to use only 1.2 or above. You're going to fail all kinds of compliance standards, and you'll be using an encryption that's breakable and insecure. There's all kinds of things like that, and you should have maybe another fresh pair of eyes. Get a consultant in there, or if that's just not something you could afford, maybe you could talk to another friend of yours who's in a similar line of work and another business, and talk to management and do kind of voluntary crisscross. They come in and check your environment, fresh pair of eyes, and you check their environment, fresh pair of eyes. It never fails. The value of a fresh pair of eyes, even someone who's not particularly good, just someone who has some basic training on IT, not even a security professional, can go in and just see things anew, and they'll catch things that you won't. It's very important to invite people in to criticize. It's hard. No one likes to be criticized. No one likes to be busted. Oh, you're doing this wrong. Don't make it like that. It's just, how can you help each other? Find what's wrong so you can see it and you can fix it. Enough on that. And finally, policy. You should review your policy for two reasons. One, to make sure the policy itself is adequate. Does it meet your compliance standards with all the standards you have to meet? If you're running NIST 800-171, is the policy good enough to meet that? Is it compliant with your HIPAA demands, with PCI, with whatever compliance you have to be under? If it's FINRA, if you're a financial organization. And then you want to see is not only the policy itself adequate, but are you adequately executing? Another common problem I've seen is there is policy, nobody reads it, nobody does it. The difference between what you say you're doing and what you actually are doing gets quite large sometimes if you don't do a quality control and you don't look at it every year. Another common thing you want to do with your policies, you want to do permissions check, scope creep. So say somebody got hired in accounting and they're doing accounting really well, but they also kind of play arbitrator and deal with, they got better people skills than they do accounting skills. They end up in HR, right? Well, who's going to remove their rights from accounting? I mean, they're trusted. In fact, they just got promoted. I went from underling in accounting to head of HR. This kind of thing happens, right? It's hypothetical. Now they got HR rights and accounting rights, but they're not doing accounting anymore. That is rights scope. You don't want that to happen in your organization, so you want to review your permissions to make sure they line up with what the expectation is and remove permissions. You want to do some house cleaning. It's just time to go through and do that kind of thing. You should have an onboarding procedure, an offboarding procedure, a number of policies we can go into in another video. But it's a good time yearly to review that kind of thing, make sure it's doing an adequate job of describing what your corporation should be doing, and that you're in fact following those policies. It's a good time to do that kind of quality control check, because I tell you that happens all the time. Anyway, I think that's enough for 1 year, right? For the yearly stuff. There's probably some more, but that should get your mind thinking. Feel free to add to your own list, your own organization. And hey, yeah, if you got some good ones that you do yearly, stick them in the comments below. If there's any that I rattled off that caught you as particularly important, that you went, oh yeah, I never thought about that. Put that in the comments below too. I'd love to know if I helped someone out on that. Thanks a lot. My name's Andy, and I look forward to seeing you at this channel all year long.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has provided valuable information to you. Be sure to share this video with other small business owners to spread the word about the importance of cybersecurity. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you want more information about cybersecurity, visit us at www.cybervenger.com.